Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is unfolding. What happens when we release resistance and the illusion of control to allow life to just unfold? So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very, very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling, the tingling, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now, into this marvelous physical body that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to be with you this morning. As always, I so appreciate you being here and joining me. And for these morning musings, let's have a look at unfolding. What does it take to allow life to just unfold? You know, without, good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning. Rosalind says, good morning, core connectors. Yes, good morning. We get to make this core connection together. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thank you, Rosalind. So what does it take to just let life unfold? There's so many circumstances of life that occur that we find really hard to absorb and hard to flow with. And when we release our resistance, when we allow ourselves to be present to the experience of life as it's happening, we can experience a lot more peace. You know, I remember I had the privilege of being a part of a support staff for an event, a week-long event with the Dalai Lama in Allentown, Pennsylvania, a while back. And my biggest takeaway from that was his saying that the source of all suffering is false conceptualization. And when we resist life, when we try to control things, we are operating under the concept or the notion that it should be different from the way it is. And you know, I'm challenged right now by this. You guys, if you've been around, you know that Maggie was a constant presence for quite some time, and she died in the beginning of November. Still very raw for me. And I have a dear cat whose name is Jewel, and she's 15, and she's had periodic health issues with digestion, and periodically she'll stop eating and drinking, and she's bounced back every time. Well, she's in one of those phases again, and you know, she's older, so I don't know what the deal is. I I took her to emergency care yesterday, and you know, one of the options is to have all kinds of tests done to find out what's going on with her, to find out if she's having kidney failure, if she's having gastrointestinal issues, if she has tumors, you know, and the thing is, I'm not going to have her have surgery. So, you know, why put her through all of that stuff? You know, she's a big part of my heart. And I'm just, thank you so much, Tammy, sending love to you and your fur baby, love and prayers. I so appreciate that. And any prayers that any of you can muster for my dear beloved Jewel would be so appreciated. There's just this feeling of helplessness, right? And so what I'm noticing is that, good morning, Dennis. So good to have you here joining us. What I'm noticing is that, you know, I want, in my heart, I want to be able to change the way that things are. You know, I want it to be different. I see my resistance. I don't want to lose her. And I think, you know, there's so many challenges in life. The passing of loved ones, financial challenges, job challenges, emotional challenges, that we get to be looking at how we relate to these circumstances in life that aren't going the way we would like them to go. And when we experience tragedy, you know, tragedy is an interpretation. You know, if we go back to the idea of all suffering comes from false conceptualization. If we think about tragedy, tragedy is an interpretation, right? I mean, grief is where we're interpreting circumstances as losses, right? And experiencing those losses. Rosalind says, unfolding. Water will continue to flow toward the ocean. Warm hugs for all of our fur babies and feathered friends. Thank you, Rosalind. Trying to change the direction of flow by using dams or rocks. Exactly. And so that's what, good morning, Josie. So good to have you joining us. I think that, you know, our resistance to the direction that life is going, that is like trying to change the direction of the flow by using dams or rocks. You know, we're putting up resistance. We're fighting the way that things are going. And I know it's inevitable that, you know, we all die, and Jewel is going to die. I would prefer that she not die now, you know, and I certainly don't want her to suffer, and I don't want her to be uncomfortable and be struggling. So it's so interesting to try to find this balance, you know, this sense of allowing and accepting. Sometimes it's just you know, finding that space to, I guess the question is, in this context of allowing, how does that dictate action? You know, how do we reconcile the notion of action in allowing things to unfold? Because our choices impact the flow, right? So how do we know when we're flowing with life versus you know, like, how do I would love input from you guys, because as we look at the way that things are, or the way that we perceive things to be, certain things call for action, right? Or we are called to act. And when we're called to act, is that flow? You know, one way that we might be able to gauge flow is from the response of our bodies, from our heart and soul. Jewel, she was in here. I didn't even know she was in this room. So I'm asking for your prayers for my cat Jewel, who is 15 and one of the sweetest souls I've ever met. And she's having some health challenges right now. And every time she goes through this, when she's not eating or drinking, you know, I go through the fear of her dying and losing her. And so the question is, how do we be in flow rather than resisting the course of life's unfolding? You know, when is it resistance? When is it flow? How do we know the difference? And you know, I could be taking her for all kinds of tests and blood work and ultrasounds and to what end? You know, that is that gonna satisfy me? Is it going to support me in supporting her? I don't think I believe in living, in perpetuating life over perpetuating quality of life. You know, I don't particularly believe that life should be sustained at all costs. And you know, just lengthening life for the sake of breathing versus the sake of quality of life doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And so I've never done that for my pets. I've never subjected them to all kinds of intervention type measures that might prolong their life, but reduce the quality of their lives, you know, just to keep them alive. For me, at that point, it would be keeping them alive for me. It's always a very, very hard choice, you know, when to let go. And I feel very grateful to have the tool of muscle testing. So I've been able to ask my pets what their preferences have been, you know, if they wanted to be put to sleep or if they wanted not to be. And I've respected their wishes. And but getting back around to this whole notion of flow and action, you know, how do we reconcile flow and action? And when, or allowing, allowing life to unfold, does it mean sitting back passively? Or does it mean taking inspired action? Like acting from a place of deep connection. That makes more sense to me. The challenge is that in these times when we're resisting life's unfolding, oftentimes we're not as connected, right? When we're resisting life's unfolding, actually, by definition, we're not as connected. So it makes it harder to be taking inspired and guided action in those moments. Rosalind says action is happening consciously and unconsciously. The choice to act or not makes space for the love to unfold. That's beautiful. Beautifully said, Rosalind. Make space for the love to unfold. And I think, to your comment and to what I just said a moment before about being less connected in these moments of trying to control and resisting the flow of things, that the thing to do is to connect back to center, and connect back to center again and again and again, to connect with whatever guidance might be there, whatever inspired connection, whatever action might come from inspired connection. And I what's coming up is a question around trust also, because this notion of allowing is based in trust. It's based in trust of trust that life is happening for me and through me rather than to me, right? It's that everything is perfect in its unfolding. And these are working hypotheses for me, that life is happening for me and through me rather than to me, and that everything is unfolding in its perfection. And that includes our resistance, right? That includes our wanting to control, right? And it becomes, well, I guess when we're not connected as deeply as possible to our hearts, all of that stuff becomes confusion, right? It becomes something that we get in our head, we try to figure it out, and sometimes there are no good answers, right? Or there are no answers that we like, or that we prefer. I'm noticing in my thinking right now that if we can connect more deeply to our heart song and the love in our hearts, if we can connect more deeply to that trust, then we can open to a greater sense of, well, connection and allowing, which I guess what it takes is getting out of our heads and into our hearts. We resist heartbreak, understandably, right? We resist loss. We often resist change. I mean, all of that's part of change as well. Yeah. And then we also sometimes catastrophize, right? Like we'll take a situation and we'll take it down the darkest road in our thinking about it, right? We'll imagine all the worst cases, and through imagining all the worst cases, then we create all this suffering. Sometimes we do that with the intention to expect the worst and prepare for the worst and expect the best. I don't find that that's a really effective formula. You know, if we prepare for the worst, we're putting all that energy and intention in that direction, you know, which can derail our best intentions, you know, and the highest possibility of things, you know, because if we're busy preparing for the worst, maybe we're taking all this action that is inspired by fear, and I guess fear is what drives the desire to control, fear and resistance. And all of that is making it harder for us to be present to what is. So, you know, we're talking here about a bunch of things that are worth considering. You know, it's like in the face of something that where we feel helpless, in the face of feeling helpless, how do we allow for the unfolding and take our most inspired action? Good morning, Gabriel or Gabrielle. It's wonderful to have you here with us. We're talking about unfolding and how do we actually allow ourselves, or how do we find a way to release our resistance and inclination to try to control the things that are uncontrollable. I guess, you know, fundamentally, as I'm talking about it, I think what may make the difference, or what indicates the difference, is coming from love versus fear, right? If we're able to be present to love, if we're able to be present to our connection, then the actions we're inspired to take are most likely going to be very different from the actions that we take from fear. And at the very least, the vibration or the emotional frequency behind the actions taken through love versus fear are going to be very different, which impacts the whole experience and perhaps the unfolding of the situation. Rosalind says, I think that having faith helps, that our life is divinely orchestrated. In order to connect and trust during times of uncertainty, having faith helps to connect our choices and trust that our choices are guided down the right path. Rosalind, I think you make a really powerful point here, is that if we feel that we're living in a random universe where where it's empty and meaningless, then it feels like chaos, and it feels like can feel anyway very much that we're at the effect of life rather than flowing within it. And for me anyway, the faith that I've chosen and the working hypothesis that I operate under is that life is happening for me and through me rather than to me, and that it's all happening for me, even the things that feel excruciatingly painful. And I guess that's the faith that I've adopted. And I'm not saying it's true, but it does, as you've said, Rosalind, certainly make life, it certainly makes my life more navigable. And Gabrielle says, yes, everything happens for me, not to me. Exactly. Even though we may not see how that works. But I'm going to call it a morning. I hope this has been thought-provoking for you. You know, I think it's worth looking at. How do we choose to be in flow when the events of life are challenging our presence, you know, challenging us to remain present when we want to be avoiding it or controlling it or changing it? And how do we reconcile action in the face of those circumstances? Anyway, I want to thank you for being here with me this morning and engaging in these conversations. And I just so appreciate you. And good morning, Lisa. I'm so glad you were able to join us this morning. Anyway, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. And I invite you all to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network on the Facebook page, on EWN One with the Earth and Enlightened World Living. And once again, I'm so grateful for your engagement and your presence here. And until next time, so much love.